Stephen King is a world-renowned author that has written, I don't know, 100 books or something like that. He's known worldwide. He's got a ton of booktubers just clawing over themselves to make a top 10 books for him. Anyways, here's mine on the Midnight Chronicler. Please like and subscribe. Here's my top 10 Stephen King books. So, at number 10, guys, we have Insomnia. Now, this is a book that I read quite a long time ago. It follows an older gentleman named Ralph Roberts who unfortunately lost his wife. And lately, Ralph is having trouble sleeping, per the title, clearly. In this trouble he's having with sleeping, he's noticing some supernatural things happening. First off, he's seeing these strange, ghostly balloons hanging over the heads of random people in the street. And he's seeing these like little gremlin people go and snip these balloons away, and pretty soon afterwards people are passing away. That, amongst a lot of other things happening that may or may not be related to the Dark Tower series. There is a lot of really strange, interesting, incredibly eerie things going on in Insomnia, and I really have actually very much enjoyed my time with this book. This book is kind of like Stephen King's twisted version of the movie Up. You know, you have the widowed man who goes on an adventure. There are balloons involved for whatever reason. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of think of it that way because I have a different sort of mind about these kind of things, guys. But yeah, that is my number 10 book. It is Insomnia. Coming at number 9, guys, we have Kujo, the book that on the surface is about a killer dog, but is actually about a dwindling relationship between two parents with a child unfortunately stuck in the middle of the drama. This is one of those Stephen King books that I distinctly remember devouring, no pun intended, in like a day or two, basically. The scenes from the dog's perspective are actually pretty interesting. They follow simple things like him chasing a squirrel and stuff, all the way to when he starts to actually do the killings and he gets bitten and his mind starts to change for the worse. And it's actually pretty tragic from a dog's perspective, and just kind of reading about it. I myself, you know, I love dogs and stuff, so it's very heartbreaking to read about a dog whose brain slowly rots, you know. So that's all very, very cool and interesting to read about, though, and Stephen King does a masterful job of giving us that perspective. It's not quite the upper echelon of Stephen King books, but it's one that I have a soft spot for and I think of very fondly. Actually, also, there is one line from this book that has never left me since I read it probably 10 years ago, and I won't spoil it, but that line is involved with a big plot point in the book, and it revolves around a question mark. So if you guys in the comments, if you know what scene I'm talking about, be like, hey, you know, wink, I know what that scene is. Very, very brutal scene in a way. But that is my number 9. That is Kujo. Really, really enjoyed that book by old Stephen King. At number 8, we start to get a little bit controversial here with my channel. It is Pet Sematary. The book is actually a lot thinner than I recall. A lot of these books actually are. This was read by me during a scorching hot summer camping trip. I distinctly remember. You always know for some reason where you were when you were in the middle of reading a certain book. And this one, it was during a camping trip, funny enough. I distinctly remember the horrific scenes, especially the dead guy in the hospital, like the guy that had like the giant hole in his head. This book is the encapsulation of the phrase, the intrusive thoughts won. This book is a series of characters satisfying those intrusive evil thoughts, and really does a great job of putting you into the head of a parent who deals with the unthinkable, that is losing a child. So I think even though Stephen King never necessarily went through that, he really brought forth that mindset to what like the horrors that a parent would be going through mentally, and you know, the lengths that they would go to make that pain end. Pet Sematary is one that has King at his absolute creepiest. Great, great book. Now, number 7 is a book that I actually do not currently have with me right now. That is Revival. I read this book recently, reviewed it on the channel, so please go check out that review on the channel if you guys like. But I think that this book is a truly rare moment of a modern Stephen King book feeling like it's straight out of one of his best hits, like from the 80s or from the, the 90s. The scares in here really give you that existential fear. Like the enemy that the main character is facing is something out of this world, like out of our reality. He's just totally helpless, and that feeling is felt the entire way through. The scene where the main character is sleepwalking while stabbing his own forearm and chanting, "Something happened, something happened, something happened," made me pause and reread. You guys ever have those scenes where it's like, it was so good and so like, whoa, that you literally rewind a couple paragraphs and reread it? Yeah, that was that scene in this book, just where you stop yourself and say, holy shit, I gotta read that again. It is truly, truly trippy in all the best ways. So Revival, that is number 7 on my list. Next up, we have Misery, Misery, Misery. Misery is focused, anxiety-inducing fun. This book is very much in the same vein as Kujo for me in terms of how ravenous I was in finishing it. I love the messed up scenes of Paul, who is captured by Annie. Basically, guys, if you don't know, this book is about an author who is captured by a crazed superfan, basically, and made to write a book specifically for that fan. And the fan just, will not let the author leave. The author's name in here, I believe, is Paul Sheldon. Yes, Paul Sheldon. But the scenes of Paul having to kind of deal with being captured, like the crazy stuff where he's having to filter and drink his own pee, as well as the other torturous moments that he had to rise above, and the absolutely addicting moments of reading about how batshit crazy Annie Wilkes is. She's such a great villain because she's the first villain I think I truly hated. Not despise like a typical like mustache twirling villain. I hated this villain. There's something hauntingly real about her. Hauntingly real about her obsession with Paul. It's so lifelike because those people in her life that are just super fans of somebody and like to the max, where they almost take it to a weird level. That's very much Annie Wilkes in this book. Her constant obsession with Paul, and there's this Jekyll and Hyde aspect to her, which makes her uneasy to read about. She has these moments where she's sweet, and then she's chopping his foot off, and then she's sweet again, and then something else crazy happens. My God, does Stephen King ever know how to write people of the worst kind? And that is what is amazing about Misery. That's number 6 on my list. Number 5, we're going to get controversial again here, guys, but this one is personal to me because I love this, and this book is On Writing by Stephen King. What? A book about writing? Where is anything else? Where's Fairy Tale? Where's Eyes of the Dragon? Where's The Stand? I haven't read The Stand yet. I really need to. Where's Dr. Sleep? It's okay. But I do love On Writing. I myself, I write quite a bit. I've written for several years, and it was so cool to get ideas and thoughts from the man himself. And getting to hear Stephen King spill his heart about the craft is super interesting to someone like me. And in typical Stephen King fashion, he's talented enough to make even a book about writing as interesting as reading one of his typical hits. I frequently re-listened to the part in this book where he finally sold the paperback rights to Carrie, and the amount of money that he was given for those paperback rights just made him collapse. It's a powerful, powerful moment, and he does a great job putting you right in the moment with him, experiencing it. You're kind of overjoyed. You think about, what would I do if I was given X amount of money or sold my first book that I poured my heart and soul into. Stephen King lets us go behind the curtain of that moment with him, and it's great. Beyond the story aspects, there's some really, really excellent pieces of advice that still stick with me to this day. So if you guys, anyone out there, writers, give this book a shot, please. What are you doing? Even listen to the audiobook, narrated by Stephen King himself, and it is great. Okay, moving into the top 4, we're getting warmer here, guys. This is going to be another interesting or controversial pick by me, a book I actually don't have on hand, and that book is The Drawing of the Three. Reading in general, guys, to me fell by the wayside once I finished this book, and that's not to say anything about the quality of the book. Obviously, I have it at number 4, or about Stephen King's writing, or about The Dark Tower. I just stopped reading at that point. So it's kind of bittersweet to think about. about. This was the book that opened my mind to something special with the Dark Tower, and actually maybe even fantasy as a whole. The Gunslinger's world expanded so much from the first book. This book is way better than book one. So guys, if you've read The Gunslinger and were turned off by it, give The Drawing of the Three a shot. If you don't like it after that, the series might not be for you. But there's so many cool scenes in different aspects, the doorways to different worlds in this book, people getting eaten alive by giant crabs, the shootouts, and Roland's character getting a new dimension to him was super riveting. I loved The Drawing of the Three, and it is number 4 on my list, guys. Go read it. Okay, top 3, guys. This is getting very, very serious now. It's really not, but it's just my opinion. Don't take it that seriously. Number 3, guys, The Shining. A classic that needs no introduction from me. I think this book is much better than the movie, and the descent of Jack Torrance's character from loving father into an alcoholic figure feels totally terrifying and real. I know people like Jack Torrance, and maybe some of you guys out there do too. We know people like this, and it's tragic, it's heartbreaking. The book is very different from the movie as well, so if you're one of the rare few that haven't read this, please go do so. The scenes are very, very cool, like the hedge animals coming to life, a lot more introduction and depth to the whole Shining element of it, and a lot more scares to be had in the book as well. So love The Shining. It is number 3 on my list. There you go. Number 2, guys, on my list is a 1,000-page beast of a book. That is Under the Dome. It is the first ever Stephen King novel that I ever read, and I completely demolished this book reading-wise. I don't think I've ever read a book faster than this one. This might be the shock of the list for many people. I realize that. I have a ton of fond memories of reading about the small town that wakes up with a clear dome over top of it randomly. And I think partly because, yes, the premise is interesting, but the fact that I lived in a small town kind of made the whole thing like, my mind just raced with like, well, what if my small town had this happen? What would actually happen? And obviously with this book, you're showing up for the mystery of the dome and why it happened. Why is there a giant dome over the small town? And again, most importantly, what will being trapped do to the people in this town? It's all interesting, and it came together for an addicting 1,000+ page read that I remember many scenes and moments of in this book to this day. Give Under the Dome a chance if you guys have time for a giant book to start reading. It's worth visiting with all these people and the villains especially that you get to interact with and see throughout this story. There it is, number 2. Guys, number 1, probably not a shock to many, but with number 1 on my list, guys, we are going, of course, with It. The coup de grace of Stephen King books, the epic story that not only stars Stephen King's most epic and recognizable villain, Pennywise the Clown, but it seems to transport everyone who reads this book back into being a kid again. That's a really underrated part of Stephen King's works. He's so good at making us feel like kids again. And I think that's why people love this book. It's not just because, there's a really creepy, crazy, cool clown that can transform into, your deepest fears. Stephen King makes you feel like you're back in the neighborhood with your friends again. Back in the days when you're just hanging out with kids around the block. The movies that came out recently were pretty popular, but still so much was left out of the story that the book contains, especially moments with a giant turtle and other really strange scenes that are just too messed up to even describe or hint at. If you want a story with characters that you'll feel like you're friends with too, as well as scenes of horror and intrigue revolving around a killer clown from outer space, not those killer clowns from outer space, but the killer clown from outer space, give this book a read. Everybody, that will conclude my top 10 Stephen King books of all time. Again, there's so many more to read, guys. Leave a comment in the comment section below. Let me know what you thought of the list. What books from Stephen King should I check out that I'm missing here? Just give your thoughts, guys. Give recommendations. Talk to each other about the books. Discuss what are your top 10 favorites. Let me know in the comment section, guys. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. There will be a lot more content where this came from. Midnight Chronicler, guys. Talk to you later.